This video is about the history of the Anglo-Saxons, the group of people who wrote Beowulf. The Anglo-Saxons are considered to have been around from about the 8th to the 11th century, so that would be the 700s to the 1000s in years. And they're said to have established the first poems of the English language, and Beowulf is one of those. The Anglo-Saxons came from Scandinavia to the island of Britannia in the middle of the 5th century, so that would be the 400s, and they dominated that island of Britannia until the 11th century. So what you can see is that they came from this section here all the way over to what we now consider England. That's the island of Britannia. Number 2, they were considered a Germanic warrior society emphasizing bravery, honor, and glory in battle. And number 3, a patriarchal society based on the concepts of kinship, comitatus, and fraternity. So let's look at those a little more closely. Kinship is the relationship between individuals and the other members of the tribe, including the king. So everyone is considered part of this tribe. No one person is more important than another. And then we would say that one's ancestry, especially for this Germanic warrior society, is traced through their patriarchs. That's their father, their grandfather, their great-grandfather. The mothers would be the matriarchs, on the other hand. So kinship is that idea of family, and our tribe is our family. Next, comitatus is a Germanic power arrangement, and here's what that means. The king rules with, and here's our key word, with the thanes, or a fancy word for knights. What the thanes do is they swear fidelity to the king. They are going to be totally loyal to him. And then the king rewards the thanes with land and with money and jewelry and cool war gear so that they have this bond and this way of kind of bribing each other and rewarding each other for loyalty. Last is the concept of fraternity, and that would be the close social bonds among the men of the tribe. We don't know too much about the women. They weren't written about. They weren't recorded. Their lives weren't recorded in the same way as these warrior men. But it's those close social bonds. And you'll notice that fraternity has a very strong connection to kinship, right? That idea of family is as much your actual father or your actual grandfather as it is the person next to you in battle. One thing to know about fraternity is that violence and revenge were okay. So the bonds of fraternity say that we must avenge any wrongdoings against our tribesmen. So one person is harmed, one person is killed, we all have to go find revenge for him. Then we have this concept of war guild, or the man payment. That's basically paying a slain man's family to make up for the murder and then to prevent the family from taking any revenge against the manslayer. But what you'll see is everything is about glory and honor, right? If you killed one of my tribesmen, I have to go do wrong to you. If you killed someone in my family, I have to go do wrong to you. So I'm going to write in glory here, or honor. All of it is about making sure that we're on a level playing field. Okay, and who were the Anglo-Saxons? Number 4. They were a polytheistic society. That means they worshipped many gods, many pagan Norse gods and goddesses. They were one of the earliest converts to Christianity, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in class and another video. And then we'll consider this concept of weird, which is fate in Anglo-Saxon, versus God's plan. And you can imagine that if you have this group of people that forever has been considering fate as the determining factor for their lives, and now they're being told that God has a plan for them, that's a big mindset shift. And so we'll see that blend of paganism and Christianity in Beowulf. Anglo-Saxon warriors were motivated by one thing: glory. Glory for one's king, glory for one's ancestors, glories for one's tribe, and glory for oneself. That's what everything was about. And the warriors also had to abide by this Germanic hero code, and we're going to use this a lot in class with Beowulf. Number 1, you need to have strength, courage, and loyalty in warriors. Number 2, we need to have hospitality, generosity, and political skill in our kings. We need ceremonious women, or women who are willing to celebrate these warriors and who are willing to kind of bow down to them. And number 4, a good reputation in all people. This kind of goes back to that concept of glory or the concept of honor. and making sure that your name is never smeared in any way. Next, we'll talk about the Anglo-Saxon mead hall, which was essentially, as you can see in this picture, a dining hall. But it was more than that, too. It was a place of warmth, food and drink, and song and celebration. After battle, that would be the warriors' safe haven, where they could all gather and reward each other for bravery or reward each other for courageous acts on that battlefield. It was the king's symbol of power, so the decorations and the place that he sat and how everyone was arranged around him all showed off his power and his riches. It was also a place to preserve tradition and pass on stories through oral tradition, or we could sit and we could talk about stories, and we could pass them on then from person to person or family to family. The Anglo-Saxons were also considered artists, so we have poetry and storytelling from them, but we're also going to look later at some of their metal and some of the jewelry that they made. That'll be more important to us later in the week. Last couple things. So as a literary period, as something that we would put on a timeline of British literature, the Anglo-Saxons would go from the 5th to the 11th century. Their major genres would be the epic poem, which is a long narrative poem about heroic deeds and events that are important to the poet's culture. This is Beowulf. So Beowulf is an epic poem. And then we have those stories that I said were passed down through oral tradition, maybe in the mead hall, maybe out in other places. Major themes that we'll talk about for the literary period in general is praise of triumphant heroes and the spread of Christian religion and morality. And we'll talk more about how that happened a little bit later. So as we transition into Beowulf itself, this is going to be a story about a Germanic warrior abiding by the Germanic hero code and everything that motivates a warrior. It's set in Scandinavia in the 5th century, in the 400s. So notice, it's a story of the Anglo-Saxon ancestors, and we'll talk about how it was also passed down through the oral tradition. Be sure you have your notes template all filled out before you submit it to Canvas, and I'll see you tomorrow.